My name is Anthony J. Suber. I am a Texas born and bred artist. I am a interdisciplinary artist, which means I'm a sculptor and painter. I work with various mediums to tell stories and narratives. I've described myself as a visual griot, a Southern polymath because of my various interests. I'm also a professor of art at the University of Houston. I am the 2026 Tulsa Race Massacre Lectureship Artist. So a little bit about the exhibition that I'm bringing to Phillips. It is obviously connected to the Tulsa Race Massacre, but there are also some stories that, I'll say they're stories of us. And much of the work that I do is centered in the African diaspora. It is really a focus on time and the way that we experience that through grief and tragedy and struggle, but also through joy, happiness and elation. The work that I will feature is really a part of the history of how I see my ancestors moving forward. There is a piece called the Seed Cloak that will be featured in the exhibition that is a mixed media sculpture. The best way I can describe it is it's a vestment that is worn by a future being. And so there's a bit of ancient future and Afrofuturism kind of mixed into the work that I'll be showing. There will also be a series of paintings, sculptures, and mixed media drawings that will be on display. And so the work really is going to try to center the voice of the ancestors that were here, and not just those from the diaspora, but also the indigenous cultures that are connected to the diaspora, to the African diaspora. It's a historical lens that I'm really seating myself in, but it's also aimed at the future and what that could look like. My family is from East Texas, my father from Palestine, Texas, and my mother's side of the family is from a town called Crockett, Texas, which both of them are really small towns. And I would make a yearly pilgrimage with my grandmother, my mother's mom, to Crockett to see our family property that was bought right after enslavement by my ancestors. It was an original freedom colony in Texas where there was a church, there was a barber shop, there were houses, homes, there was a fishing pool. And really it was just a sacred piece of land that we still have in our family today. I think during that time I got bit by the history bug. I think she did her job with teaching me. I did what children typically do. I absorbed the information, didn't really know what to do with it until I became much older. And I found that the work that I was making, especially when I was in undergraduate school, was really connected to history in a way that was a part of the way that my grandmother wanted to share information, which not only was it an exchange in just what happened in history, but it was also a call to do something with that information and knowledge. And essentially what I came to understand was that she was asking me to be a voice for those that were voiceless. And so when, fast forward to now as a visual artist, my work is really intertwined with this idea of social sculpture, which is a theme that Joseph Beuys, who was an artist that really believed in the power of how art and community can kind of work hand in hand, but also that art can serve many different functions within a society. I've also studied under several of the founders of Project Row Houses in Houston, Floyd Newsom being one of my mentors who just passed away not too long ago. But I met him once I graduated from high school, and it changed my life. And so since that point in time, I feel like, the love of history, but also this idea of activating history through direct intervention has been something I'm curious about. And then also how cultures can have similar languages. And so there's an element of the diaspora that really deals with the celestial the stars and the moons and the planets, and how those things communicate messages and how those messages can be carried from generation to generation. And so I use quite a bit of quilt codes and deconstructed sacred geometry in the work. And so there's a lot of symbolic elements that I hope are grasping at, again, these various moments in time, but also gives people a sense of familiarity, that they see something that is a part of their history and their story. So it's not just about me. I think a lot of it is really me trying to reach my ancestors and then the people that are my contemporaries. I do have a piece. I'm hoping that we'll bring it. I'm not sure if I'll bring it, but it's a piece called Blessed Arrival. It was a piece that took me 2 years to make. I started in my studio around the same time that I was making a series of other pieces after my father had passed away from COVID. And I was really reflecting on, again, the historical journey of like my own personal story, but also the relationship that my father and I had. And so much of what I struggled with him was a lack of information, a lack of understanding where he was coming from. And so we had an estranged relationship for many years. But after he passed away, I kept thinking about all the historical things that I just picked up from being around my family and just even side conversations I was having with him. And what it made me think about was a being that exists in space and time without the presence of a physical body. And so the piece is a 4 foot by 8 foot piece. I'm sorry, 4 foot by 6 foot piece. Wood panel. I call it a collage, but it's really just an assemblage that's made from paper and drawings. And what you'll see, I'll try to describe it, but what you'll see is a mixture of surrealistic themes having to do with nature and horticulture. There's a figure that's emerging from what I call a time portal, and the figure is reaching into the future and is connecting to this kind of growth of hands that are meant to be a symbol of our ancestors. And at the bottom of the piece, so during that time period, I was really doing a lot of research about water and the healing properties of water. And of course, there are some connective themes that come when you talk about bodies of water, especially in the United States, and how enslaved Africans, one, used it for communication, but they also used it for traveling, for safe passage for the Underground Railroad. And then there's the essence of the ecotone of water systems and how they carry history. And so much of what we know of our ancestry is connected to bodies of water. And so at the bottom of this piece, there is a body of water, kind of abstract, but it's a body of water with sediment. The hands are actually growing out of this water, this ecotone. And so it's one of my favorite pieces. It's very elaborate. There's, like I said, cut paper, drawing. There's also some jewelry. I make wearable sculptures. And so I actually incorporated that into the flat piece. And I'm definitely excited about bringing that piece because I think it's an anchor. It was an anchor in the last exhibition. And so I feel like it would be a strong expression to show it here. I want to be known that, art is a doorway for healing. It's a place where change can be manifested. And I think that, the roots of why this show has come to be something that's really important to the community. I think it's something that will grow and continue to be nurtured by people who care. But I think also as we talk about history and we want to connect these different stories, we have to be very mindful about, who's telling the story and those lessons that we learn from them. And so the thing that I really want to leave, I guess, with is that, we have to look at history and art as two things that coincide with one another. There's an important an imperative journey that we all must take through history. And so in order to know where we've heard this from many scholars, writers, and theologians before, but you don't know where you're going unless you know where you've come from. And so that's really what I seek to do with my art. And I hope, that when viewers come to see the work, they will see a bit of themselves in addition to the intentional choreography that I've placed in the work.